Okay, just before we begin, making sure that you've got everything you need for this class, setting up the mat so that it is running forward and back toward me. Maybe you'll need a drink of water, making sure you're not going to be disturbed for the next wee while. And you could even choose to play some music in the background or anything you like. I've chosen to keep this track without any music in the background so that you can choose that yourself. Okay, so just taking a moment now, coming down onto the mat as I am and crossing your legs in a way that's comfortable for you. And I invite you to close down your eyes and just take a moment to land here on the mat. And it could be nice to bring one hand to your heart center and maybe the other hand to your belly. Making sure you're still sitting up nice and tall. And just feeling into how you're breathing right now. And as you take a few breaths, you'll start to notice whether your chest is primarily the area that's moving or if your belly is moving too. And after a breath or so, be nice to really actively invite that breath right down into the belly. So with each breath you're really letting that belly expand, the chest expand and those shoulders opening nice and wide. A couple more breaths like this as you start to land on your intention for today's class. Perhaps it's an intention that you've been carrying through several classes, an intention you're carrying through the month or the year, or just something today. It could be just to choose to be present with your body today. Okay, when you're ready from here, just rolling over those crossed legs so that you're onto hands and knees. And I'm going to press back to an extended child's pose. This is a position that you're going to find yourself in a lot of my yoga classes. It's sort of the rest position. It's a position that you can come back to at any time if you'd like to take a break from the sequence I'm instructing. And to find your way into this position, just making sure your hips are back over your heels. You've got your hands extended out in front of you. And your ears might be just in alignment with your upper arms so that your head's not on the mat at all. But for some, it can be comfortable to have your forehead all the way down onto the mat. And really, just resting into this position, you can make it active or relaxed. To make it more active, you're actively reaching those hands away from you and pressing those hips back a little over the heels. That's it. And we're going to take a little stretch here. So you're going to walk those hands over to the right side. And that way you can feel a nice stretch down the left side of your body, really actively reaching both of those hands away from you still. And keeping those hips nice and centered. On your next exhale, you can walk those hands back towards center. Center yourself slightly and then continue on, walking the hands over to the left side this time. Feeling that stretch down the right side of the body. Remembering to breathe, and throughout our classes we generally breathe through the nose, so just inviting you to do that, but if you need to breathe through the mouth at all, you can do that too. Now coming back to center, and we'll press up to hands and knees, or what we sometimes call a tabletop position. And in this position we want to make sure that we're stacking our limbs. Our shoulders are above our elbows, which are above our wrists. Our hands are shoulder width apart. And our knees are about as far apart as our hands are. The knees are directly below the hips. And we're going to take a few cat-cow movements. So to begin with, you can drop the belly a little bit toward the floor and lift that head up so that you're gazing forward toward me. So there's a slight arch in the spine here, and that will increase with each movement. So on your next exhale, we're going to press the floor away with the hands and curve through the spine. So we're angling that pelvis, so we're rounding through the spine, dropping the head down. You might stay here for a breath or two just to feel into this shape. And when you're ready to move on, as we inhale, we can begin with the hips as you arch that pelvis once again, drop the belly a little toward the floor, opening through the chest and gazing forward. A breath or two here. So your shoulders are open nice and wide. And exhaling to flow through again, leading with those hips, rounding through the spine, dropping the head, pressing the floor away with the hands. And a little quicker now as we inhale here. Gazing forward. And exhale, rounding through. One more time on each. Inhale as we arch that spine, shoulders nice and wide, down away from the ears. And exhale to curve through. Okay, we'll return to a neutral spine now with this tabletop position, and then on the next inhale I'd like you to reach that left hand forward and breathing here. Activating through the core, because on your next exhale you're going to step the opposite foot out behind you. So you're pressing the sole of that foot out toward the wall behind you. You'll start to feel perhaps a little wobbly, and just imagining in your own mind, drawing a bit of a line between the arm and the leg and the line that the floor creates, and trying to create parallel lines here. So that might mean wanting to lift your leg up a little or drop it down. On your next exhale, we'll drop both of those limbs back down to that neutral tabletop position. Just resetting a moment here. And we'll do the same on the other side, inhaling that right arm out in front. And on your next exhale, left foot out behind. So you can see that my toes are pulled back toward my shins. So I'm not pointing my toe toward the back wall, I'm pointing the sole of my foot. And you can see that my right hand, the palm is facing inward. And I've got a neutral spine, so you can gaze toward the camera, toward me, to see what I'm doing. But then I'd like you to bring a neutral spine, and that means just gazing toward the floor just in front of your hand, so that the crown of your head is pulling out toward this video. Okay, on the next exhale, you can drop that down. We'll press back to that extended child's just to release here. You might like to rotate your wrists a little after spending a little time on those wrists. Beautiful. Okay, from here we're going to press up to downward facing dog. Downward facing dog is a shape that you'll come into most of my classes. So we'll tuck our toes and lift those hips toward the ceiling. Now, to open up into this shape, we won't find a perfect inverted V straight away, because your body needs to open up into the shape. So what we can do to do that is pedal those feet a little, so that you're stretching through those calf muscles and hamstrings. That's it. And then once you've done a little bit of that, those heels come down toward the floor, but they don't have to find their way there. We're really thinking of lifting through those hips and pressing our chest back toward the thighs. You can see that that starts to bring in that shape a little. There's a lot more to think about in this shape. So in downward dog, you really want to make sure that you are looking after those wrists. And to do that, you want to maybe think about having the pressure mostly in your thumb and first two fingers. And you want to also make sure those shoulders aren't hugging the ears too much. So opening through those shoulders, that chest is pressing back toward the thighs. We'll take 2 or 3 more breaths here. You'll feel that your hands are more or less shoulder width apart. You're really resting through that head and neck, so you can see I'm not gazing forward at all. I'm really just allowing that head to hang. And we're going to prepare to come to the top of our mat. So to do that, I invite you to bend a whole lot through the knees and gaze forward to the hands. And then you can just tiptoe those feet toward the hands so that you can come to the top of your mat. Inhale to roll your way up to standing. Arms up overhead. And then bring those hands back down to side. Okay, so as you're standing here at the top of your mat, this is Samasthiti or equal standing. You can take a breath or two And even in this shape, we really want to think about what we're doing with our body. So you can start from the bottom and work your way up, thinking about what you're doing with each part of your body. So those feet are side by side. You can think of drawing those kneecaps up toward the thighs, so you're getting a little active through the thighs. With the hips, you want to think of bringing the tailbone down and that low belly in a little. We're standing nice and tall, so my shoulders are spread wide. You could have the palms facing toward me or toward your body, just whatever feels quite neutral for you. Lifting through that head, the crown of the head really lifting up toward the ceiling. Good. Okay, we're going to flow through a sun salutation sequence. There's a lot of ways to do this, but this is one that is commonly weaved through many of my classes. Okay, so standing at the top of your mat, when you're ready, we'll inhale, the arms up overhead. The gaze will come up toward the ceiling. We'll stay here for a breath or two. Making sure you're breathing evenly through the nose and allowing that breath to come into the belly. On the exhale, we'll come to a forward fold, so the arms might go out wide. You've got a long, straight, flat back as you fold through. And then this first fold, again, you might not find the deepest fold because your hamstrings still need to open up. And that's fine. So the fingertips might find their way to the floor or to the shins. Just really allowing that upper body to dangle over the legs. Breathe in here. On the next inhale, we'll find a halfway lift. So in a halfway lift, we're straightening through that spine. You're going to gaze to the mat in front of you and get nice and open through the shoulders. Hands are on the shins, or for some, you might like to reach the fingertips to the floor in front of you. That's great. On the next exhale, we're going to step back to a plank. So to do that, you can bend through the knees, bring your hands down to the floor and step one foot then the other into a plank. We're going to stay in this plank for a little while and just check in with the body. So in a plank, you want to breathe, first of all, and also, like we did in the tabletop, making sure that your shoulders are stacked above your elbows, which are stacked above your wrists. You can also see that I'm a little bit lifted through the pelvis and the low back. I don't want to drop down into the low spine. That would be really problematic for your low back, especially if you've had issues there before. So keeping that a little bit lifted so you can get nice and active through that core. So you're active everywhere. You're active through the legs, the thighs are firing, the glutes are firing. You're actively pressing the floor away with your hands. And you generally will be just looking at the mat between your hands. Okay, we're going to lower down now. So this is called knees, chest, chin. So following along with me, your knees come to the mat first. And then, hands staying where they are, your chest is going to press toward the floor between your hands. And your butt's going to stay up for a little moment. So as you do this, you can lower that chest down and you can see that my elbows are alongside my ribs. So if you've done that and you feel like your elbows are out to the side, just think of pulling them back in, so they're really hugging that rib cage. And the chin is really close to the mat too. On the inhale, we're going to press to a cobra. So that's lowering that belly down, pressing that chest open and forward, and we'll untuck the toes. Lots to think about, but we'll flow through this a few times. And so while we're here in this cobra, you're actively pressing the floor away with the hands. Glutes are activated, tops of the feet are pressing into the floor. Shoulders are spread nice and wide. Your chin is tucked a little bit, so you can really lift through that crown. You don't want to be arching too much through the neck. Lots to think about, but as I said, it will come naturally after a few sessions. Tucking the toes, and we'll press back to downward facing dog from here. So pressing the floor away with the hands, hips lift. Adjust if necessary if you feel like you need to step in a little closer or a little further away. And again, pressing those hips toward the ceiling in this inverted V position, taking a few breaths here. Returning to that intention that you're carrying through today's class. Bending a whole lot through those knees, and we'll get ready to step toward the top of the mat again. You can take one big step and then another, or you can tiptoe. We'll inhale to find that half lift just like we did on the way back through this sequence, and then exhale to forward fold. Breathe in here. So you might like to ragdoll those arms, just allow them to hang. No need to try and keep the straightest of legs, really. The tiny bend here could make all the difference to really release in the upper body. On the next inhale, we might roll our way up to standing this time. So just think of that, those vertebrae rolling as you stand. The arms will flow all the way up to the ceiling, gazing up to that ceiling, taking an extra breath here. And as you exhale, you can bring those hands to heart center. Good, so that was one rotation through a sun salutation. We'll go a little quicker this time, and then again, maybe quicker still before adding in a few more things. So we'll return to equal standing, those hands either side of the body, checking in that those feet are side by side, shoulders spread wide, standing nice and tall. On your next inhale, arms up overhead, gazing to the ceiling. Beautiful. As you exhale, forward fold. We'll take an extra breath here in the fold. On your next inhale, finding that half lift, nice straight spine, crown toward me. And as you exhale, coming into that plank, hands to the floor, stepping back, taking an extra breath or two here, getting nice and active through the core. Beautiful. We'll lower down for knees, chest, chin, taking your time. So knees first, thinking of pressing that chest between your hands, elbows alongside the ribs. And inhale and press that belly to the floor, chest lifts, untucking toes for cobra. A breath or two here. Active through the glutes. Coming into down dog from here, tuck toes, lift hips, 3 breaths here. Beautiful. Bending through the knees, gazing forward, we'll walk our way to the top of the mat. Half lift on the inhale, that's it. And exhale to fold. Extra breath here. Inhaling to roll your way up to standing, arms up overhead. And exhale, hands to heart center. Beautiful. Maybe closing down those eyes and just coming back to the center of yourself, checking in with that breathing. Staying present with your body and the breath, and everything else can take a back seat until the end of class. Returning to equal standing, and we'll flow through this once more. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half lift. Exhale, plank. All in the same breath. Knees, chest, chin, elbows grazing the ribs. On the inhale, chest is forward to cobra. And exhaling to downward facing dog. Beautiful. So staying in this down dog for a few breaths. And as we step to the front of the mat, take one foot and then the other to do that. Inhale for that half lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, roll your way up to standing, arms up. Exhale, hands to heart center. Breathing here. And returning to equal standing, Samasthiti. Okay, we're going to add a few more things into this flow now, so just follow along. And of course, if it feels too strong or you want to modify, then do that. And you can always return to that child's position if you need a bit of a rest. Okay, so standing at the top of the mat, In equal standing, shoulders down, crown nice and lifted. Inhaling, arms up. Exhale, fold. Half lift with an inhale. Stepping back to plank on your exhale. Knees, chest and chin, all on that same breath. And as you inhale, we'll press up to that cobra. Maybe slightly deeper bend in the spine this time. And coming to down dog, tucking toes, lifting hips. 3 breaths here. From here, we're going to step into a lunge. So we're going to bend through the knees a little and step the right foot between the hands. You can help it if you need to, but you want to have the foot land between the hands. Okay, so that back knee is still lifted. You're gazing at the foot. Hands are either side of that foot, remembering to breathe. And we're going to come up into a high lunge here. On the next inhale, these hands are going to come forward and up. And we're nice and strong through that thigh for balance, strong through the core. If you're feeling really wobbly, you might find that your feet are sort of skiing, like they're in line. So just, you can bring the hands back down and step that back foot over to the side a little, or the front foot over to the side a little, so that you've got a little bit of balance there. Breathing here. If you feel like you're quite high up in the air, just thinking of dropping down so that that thigh is getting closer to parallel with the floor, and making sure that your knee isn't going beyond your toe. On the next exhale, just bring those hands back down to the mat, framing that front foot. Beautiful. Taking a breath or two here. And just trying that once again on the inhale, lifting those arms forward and up. And exhale to bring those hands back down. Beautiful. Okay, getting nice and strong through the core. You're going to lift this front foot up and then step it back alongside the other foot. Returning to that plank. Good. Drop those knees to the mat. This time we're pressing back our hips toward the heels for that extended child's. Taking 3 lovely breaths here. We'll return to down dog from here, so to do that, come back to hands and knees first, tuck toes, lift hips. So again, checking in with this down dog, making sure that your the pressure in your hands is mostly in the thumb and first 2 fingers. Cool. Heels are coming down toward the floor, and hips are nice and high. Okay, we'll take a step to the top of the mat, bending those knees, stepping, inhaling for that half lift, and exhaling to fold. On the inhale, rolling your way back up to standing, arms up. Exhale, hands to heart center. Maybe closing those eyes for a breath or 2. Feeling that energy flowing through your body. And releasing to equal standing. Inhale, arms up. And exhale, fold. Inhale for that half lift. Exhale, plank. You'll be starting to get familiar with these movements as we drop knees, chest, chin. Inhale for cobra. Beautiful. Exhale, finding that downward facing dog. 3 breaths here. This time we're going to step the left foot forward, so bending through the knees, gazing forward, taking that left foot between the hands. Taking a little bit of time to adjust yourself if you need to, so If you feel like those feet are too much in line and you're not going to have balance, then stepping those feet just that tiny bit wider. Keeping a generous bend through that front knee. And then getting nice and strong through the thigh, through the core as you inhale those arms forward and up. A couple of breaths here. So you can see my gaze is straight forward, but the arms are really lifted. Palms are facing toward each other. You can exhale to bring the hands back down, just adjusting yourself as you need to. And then on the next inhale, we'll come back up to that high lunge. Again, checking in that you are dropping enough through that thigh, knees aren't going beyond the toes. Exhale to bring the hands back down. Okay, again, strong through the core as you lift this foot up, pressing the floor away with the hands. Step that foot back into that plank position. Dropping the knees, and we'll come to that extended child's again. So untucking the toes, hips back over heels, arms out in front. Taking a few breaths, coming back to center. Beautiful. Coming to down dog from here. Taking your time to get there. Don't let me rush you. Taking a few breaths in this position. So every time we stop and just breathe in a position, really think about the shape that your body is making. Remembering those cues. And making sure you're allowing yourself to breathe down into the belly. Lovely. Bending through the knees, we'll step forward to the top of the mat, maybe using the other foot this time to do that. Inhaling for a half lift. Exhaling to fold. On the next inhale, you can roll your way up to standing. Arms up overhead. And exhale to bring those hands to heart center. Shoulders spread nice and wide. Crown is lifted. Chin a little bit tucked. And releasing now to equal standing. Okay, we might do a small balance sequence. So when we prepare to do a balance sequence, it's really helpful if you just take a moment to check how you're standing. Again, you just want your feet side by side, not too wide, not necessarily directly touching. And again, closing down the eyes can really help. If you close down your eyes while you're standing, I invite you to just rock a little to the right and a little to the left. And as you rock each way, you'll feel the pressure in one foot and then the other. And if you rock a little bit forward and a little bit back, you'll start to notice how your toes engage and that your body sort of keeps itself in a nice balanced state. And it's really tapping into all of those muscles. It's going to help you maintain your balance in a standing balance sequence. So now that you've done that, I invite you to open your eyes again, and as you gaze ahead, you can choose a point. It might be just looking at me on your screen, or it might be somewhere above the screen. You're going to choose a point, a gazing point, or what's called a drishti. And this point's going to help you maintain balance, because if you look at this one point while you're on one foot, then you're going to have like a balancing point for your body to use to help you stay in line. Okay, so just choosing that point now. And we're going to do a simple balance, and I say simple, but it's not simple, like we all fall down sometimes. But this is tree. And to do tree, you can choose the different positions your foot could be in. And so taking your right foot first, so we're going to bring a little bit more weight into the left foot, and the right foot's the one that's going to lift. And your options are to bring that foot toward your ankle. So as I bring my foot toward the ankle, you can see that my knee is opening out toward the sidewall. The next option is to step that foot up to the calf. Now you can see that my foot is below my knee. Right, Now, as I do this, you can see I'm starting to lean out into this hip, and we all do that, but eventually we really want to bring that hip a little bit more inward. Cool. And the next option, if you'd like to challenge yourself a little bit more, is to bring this foot up above the knee. Now, never pressing the foot into the knee. We always go a little higher, and you'll probably need to help it, so just reach down and grab your ankle. Bring the sole of that foot to the inside of that thigh, above the knee, that's it. So pressing that foot into the thigh and the thigh back into the foot, okay? Keeping the knee nice and open. And options here, you might like to just have your hands on hips, or you can bring your hands out to either side. You could do a little mudra shape with one of your fingers against the thumb, but that's not necessary. And as you do that, just gazing at that drishti, that gazing point, and maintaining your balance here, and you'll feel that the little muscles in that standing foot are all activating. They're all doing all sorts of things to make sure that you can keep your balance. Just let that happen and just marvel at the way that our bodies do this, almost unconsciously, right? And again, if you feel like you're leaning a little too much into this hip, see what you can do to bring it back to center. Cool. And just feeling into whether that knee is open right out toward the sidewall. If you feel like it's tending toward the front a little, just do what you can to activate those muscles in the side of the thigh and in the buttocks to open that knee. Another breath or two here. And you can just release this now when you're ready, just gently stepping that foot back to the floor. You can maybe shake those feet out a little, just give some love to that standing leg. It's done a wee bit of work here. And return to that neutral standing. Again, just making sure we're not getting rounded through the spine, we're not slouching down, we're still standing nice and actively tall. Bring a little bit more weight into the right foot this time. And get ready to lift through that left leg. And again, the options being ankle, and you can see that the ankle option, the toes can even just touch the mat a little bit there. And this is a legitimate option, especially if you've had any injuries through the ankles or legs, or if you're really still building your balancing strength. This will help, because as I'm doing this, my right foot is still doing that activation of all those muscles. So even if you're quite seasoned and used to doing the more advanced balance of the tree, then maybe try this sometime and just see what that feels like for you. Next option, of course, is the sole of that foot to the inside of the calf. And if you'd like to come a little bit higher, remembering you're probably going to need to grab the ankle to do this, bringing it up to the inside of the thigh, always above or below the knee, never against it. It's not good for those ligaments in the knee. It can cause injury. Okay, so we're pressing the sole of the foot into the thigh and the thigh back into the foot, and that's really going to help maintain that balance. Active through that glute and the side of the leg to open that knee. Lots happening here. Choosing that gazing point if you're not looking at it already. Option to have the hands on the hips or out to the side. And coming back to the breath. And maybe with your awareness on that standing foot and noticing all those wonderful little muscles activating, doing what they need to do to maintain your balance. A couple more breaths here. Later, when you've done this a few times, you might even challenge yourself by closing your eyes. It's a whole nother ball game. Okay, we'll release this now. Good. Again, shaking that leg out a little bit. Beautiful. Okay, I'd like you to step your feet just a little bit wider so that they're almost mat width apart and that the toes are angled out slightly. Wherever you're standing on your mat now is fine. And as you inhale, I invite you to open those arms really, really wide, like a big wide circle, reaching up overhead. And we can do this a few times. When we exhale, bring those hands back down, flowing through that circle. Inhale, really opening. And exhale as you release, releasing anything that doesn't need to be within you anymore. Inhaling, opening. Exhale, release. Okay. One more inhale, we'll reach up over here. This time as you exhale, we're going to crouch down into Malasana. So the hands are coming to heart center. You're crouching down. Knees are angling out toward those toes, right? And you're crouching all the way down. As you crouch down, the arms might come to the inside of those knees. If you feel like standing flat on your feet like this is almost impossible, it's absolutely fine to be up on the toes to do this. Okay? And you can adjust as necessary, because what we really want to do is start to bring those hands toward the chest, and you can use the outside of your arms to press those knees a little bit more open. And you might feel like you're really, really rounded over. So see what you can do to sit up, lifting through that chest, and maybe dropping that tailbone just that little bit lower. Remembering to breathe here. Take 2 or 3 breaths. Coming back to that intention, being present with yourself, or whatever the intention was that you set today. Lovely, and we'll just gently release out of this by coming down onto the mat. Okay, I'd like you to bring the soles of your feet together. So as you're seated, just bring the soles of those feet toward each other. They don't have to be in too close to your body. And if you can reach, your hands can just be around your feet. You can also just bring them to the shins if that feels a bit more comfortable. Now for some of you, you might feel like your knees want to sit up really, really high because there's some real tightness in the sides of the legs or the inner thigh. And that's fine. If you're feeling that, then do that. If it feels too strong and there's any pain in the groin area or anywhere else, this is where you might want to use some cushions, or if you've got yoga blocks or anything that could actually sit under these knees, you could do that. But if it's just a little bit of tension, then that's healthy and that's fine. If it's just starting to stretch, and what we really want to do is just open those legs as much as we can so that those knees hang down toward the mat. And while we're doing that, you can sit nice and tall. So as you sit nice and tall, and come back to the breath. You can just send that signal to your body that it's safe to release and relax. Maybe you've closed down the eyes to do this, but as you breathe and you allow the belly to move in and out, it does show the body that it's safe. And as it's safe and relaxed, it releases those little stuck points, that tension, so much more easily. A little bit of a different approach to forcing it open. Okay, and now we're going to take a little bit of a forward fold in this same shape. And so to do that, you can just tilt your chest a little bit forward. Now for some, you might feel like you're already as far forward as you can go, and that's fine. But I invite you, before you round through the spine, is to really press the chest toward me. And you can use your feet as a bit of leverage. And after a breath or so, that's where you might round through the spine and allow the head to gently drop down. And we'll stay here for a few breaths. When you're ready to come out of this, there's no rush, but you can again just lift that head a little, straighten through that spine, and come back up. Okay, we're going to take another couple of folds here. So keeping this left leg bent, we'll extend the right leg out in front so that the sole of the foot is out toward me. You can bring the sole of this foot in toward the inner thigh, just like we were in that tree position earlier. And you can also think of those toes pulling back toward the shins a little bit. Doesn't need to be super active, but just keeping a little bit of activity through there, active through the quads. Okay, making sure that your hip bones are down on the mat, and on the inhale, we'll reach the arms up overhead. You can gaze up through the hands, or take an extra breath or two here. We're really reaching
lengthening through that spine so that we're lifting out of the pelvis. We're going to keep that straight spine as you start to tip. So we're tipping over that leg. There's no judgment for how far you make it. Keeping that straight spine. And then eventually you can bring the hands down to the shin or around the feet if that's available to you. And round a little more through that spine. So wherever you've found yourself, we're just going to spend a little bit of time here. And again, it's coming back to the breath. Coming back to the breath so that you can send that signal to your body that it's safe to release. And there's no judgment on yourself as to how far you've made it today. It's really just an opportunity to sit with that edge and allow it to shift naturally over time. Beautiful. To come out of this, we're just going to walk the hands along the shins so that you can come back up to seated. And we'll swap the legs around now. So this left leg can come out in front, right knee bends, sole of the foot into that thigh, making sure the hip bones are down. Good. Toes pulling back toward the shin a little bit. Making sure that your upper body is navigated toward the front of the room. And we'll inhale those arms nice and wide, reaching up, gazing toward the ceiling. Extra breath or two here. Really lifting out of that pelvis. And keeping that nice straight spine on the exhale, taking that fold over that leg. Reaching those arms out in front. And finally releasing the hands down to either around the foot or on the shin or ankle. And you can round through the spine a little if you'd like to, even dropping that head all the way down. And again, coming back to the breath. We'll stay here for 4 slow, deliberate breaths. And you might find as you breathe slowly and deliberately in this shape that you're actually expanding on the back side of your rib cage as you breathe. And when you're ready to come out of this, again, walking those hands along the leg, coming back to seated, you can unravel the legs and just sit here for a little moment before coming down onto your back. So just taking a moment now to do exactly that, coming down onto your back. Keeping those knees bent for a moment and just relaxing down into this shape. I invite you to hug your knees into the chest next. And you can even round through the spine, bringing that forehead up to the knees. Really hugging like a little egg. You can roll a little from side to side over that spine. And just to bring in a little inversion for the end of today's session, I invite you to press the soles of your feet up toward the ceiling. And so as we lie here in what's known as waterfall, you can make sure that those shoulders are down away from the ears, but pressing back into the floor. The hands can just press into the mat a little. And again, straightening through those legs as best you can. Toes pull back toward the shins, soles of the feet toward the ceiling. Breathing here. Recalling the intention that you've weaved through today's class. As you hug those knees into the chest once more, however you'd like to, maybe bringing the forehead to the knees again, or not. When you release this, just bringing the soles of the feet back to the mat again, hip width apart or maybe a little bit further apart. We'll take a little twist through the low back. So we're going to drop both our knees to one side. So it might be the right side first. And they won't hit the ground. It's just a chance for them to open up that way. But we'll keep our spine centered. On the inhale, you can lift those knees and then exhale to bring them over to the other side. And doing that once again, inhaling up, exhaling down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. Okay, on the inhale, just bring those knees back up. Final knee hug if you need it, or any other movements you need before coming into Shavasana. So for Shavasana, it's our final position and it's an important part of any yoga class. You should spend, try and spend 5 minutes here. This video will end and you can spend as long as you like in this position, but I invite you to make sure that you are allocating a good few minutes to this restful pose at the end of the class. And as you rest down into this shape, just keeping those shoulders away from the ears, tucking the shoulder blades under maybe. The backs of the hands can rest to the floor. Hands are just easily open and neutral. The feet are a little bit wider than hip width and your toes might angle out a little to either side. Your eyes are closed down. And you can start to release any tension through the body. And one way to do that is to mentally bring your awareness through each part of the body, maybe from the top of the head, through the face and neck, shoulders, arms, torso, legs, slowly through each individual part of the body and sending that signal that it's time to relax. If you've listened to any of my hypnotherapy, you might have a few of those progressive muscle relaxation techniques up your sleeve already. But in whatever way you'd like to, just send that signal to your body that it's time to relax. And it's also time to have a clear mind. And so, as those thoughts come, as they inevitably will, just send them on their merry way. And come back to the breath.